Hello there, happy heresies, and welcome to the Desert of the Real. Welcome to my second attempt at a vlog, and I think the first one, the feedback was very well, even as I've also put it in YouTube and other channels. So I think right now the plan is to put it on the Inner Sanctum of Facebook group. Have a Q&A, and then share it with the rest of the world in different channels. I think the Q&A will remain with the Facebook group and for patrons at Patreon. Not settled on a name yet, but we do have did a poll at the Inner Sanctum of Gnosis Facebook group, and it looks like as of now, the Abraxas brief is winning in first place. So thanks for anybody who's participated. So people are joining, and again, we will get to the Q&A. But as mentioned, I wanted to talk about ceremonial magic, or my misadventures in ceremonial magic. And again, it's sometimes there are synchronicities and they need to be followed. In fact, what's interesting is that next week, or for some people by the time this video is posted, we will have our show with Eric Wargo on precognition. And he really makes a very good case that we've all in the modern esoteric world been not leveraging synchronicity right for all these decades. Basically, synchronicity is a form of precognition, and it can be used to sort of create those time loops that he talks about in his great book, Time Loops, which is really a way of survival and improving the human nature. So, but anyway, we'll talk definitely in our interview with Eric Wargo, we'll deal with synchronicity. So anyway, and yes, here I am. It is Saturday, not shaven again, hair's bedroom hair. A good day with the kids, riding the ponies, being outside, and I do have my, yes, Abraxas gem shirt. So we are ready to go, and I hope the backdrop is better. That was the one criticism last week, but so we're improving. We are evolving with the times. Yes, back to synchronicity before I get myself in my own time loop. Recently, I've been getting a lot of emails last week about whether or not I had practiced ceremonial magic. So I thought, if that's a synchronicity, if that's a precognition, then that's perhaps a good topic for this vlog, if you would. So yes, there was a period where I did practice ceremonial magic. As some of you know, I have practiced, I have embraced all sorts of spirituality all my life. I have prayed in a Shiite mosque. I have done service at Baptist churches. I have been at synagogues. I've done meditation in theogens. Meditation. I have done whatever is out there. I have tried to practice within reason and within the law. I don't think I've never done sex magic or tantra. Does doing it by myself count? No, just kidding. No, so I think that would be one exception. But I did practice ceremonial magic in a period of my life, and it didn't work out very well. But there are reasons for it, and unusual have to do with my own humanity and Hylic shortcomings, which I will explain. What happened is this was about 10 years ago, and I had gone through a very objectively bad time in my life for many reasons. Again, some were I caused them, some were, again, objectively bad. And the culmination would have been the very sudden death of my mother, needless death. And it really struck me. I was always might say a mama's boy. My mom and I were very soul connected, and her passing really, it took me down hard with other things that were going on in my life. And and I was doing Aeon Bite at the time. It was kind of new. And so I made the really tactical and terrible mistake. Again, when you're in pain, when you're in the fog, when the pieces are shattering and you're just trying to grab shattered pieces of your life falling apart, decision making isn't always the best. So instead of seeking psychic healing or a spiritual path or anything else, for some reason I pivoted toward material reward. And it wasn't so bad. It was altruistic. I really felt that the family, that myself, would be better if we had, again, material rewards, material comforts, material pathways to what had happened, because my mother was like the matriarch of the family, and she was very well loved, and her passing really hurt my family in Portugal, as well as my family here in the United States. It was, again, it was a devastating loss. It was a sad time. So backing up, what had happened before that, setting this up of how I started Ceremonial Magic, there was a guest on the show, and his name was Keith Nicholson. He started out as a listener, and he eventually published a book called Above, Below, Within, Planetary Magic and the Greek Gods. Here is the book. And he's on the show too. I'm right now, I can't get the plug-in for a screen share on Facebook, something I'll have to work on, because I could show you where you can find his interview on YouTube, but the interview on YouTube is called The Corruption of Wicca and Modern Paganism. And his book, Above, Below, Within, does deal that. It's a scathing expose of both modern paganism as well as modern Orthodox Christianity. And he makes some very good points and so forth. But the book also is full of very approachable and easy spells. That was one of Keith's, you might say, innovations. He thought that this idea of ancient magic and grimoires and all that was nonsense, that we really had to streamline it for a modern audience and make spells, again, more approachable, easy to deal with, and more in a modern context, even if we were still dealing with the ancient gods. And it's interesting because Keith, he started out as a fundamentalist Christian. He talks about it in another interview we did on AM by Gnostic Radio, or Wadio. And he started out as a fundamentalist Christian, as a Baptist in, I believe, Mississippi or Louisiana, somewhere around there. And then he had his point of rebellion, and then he became a Satanist. And as he used to tell me, and he writes about, he was very open about it, he was like, well, I'm still stuck in the same mythology. I'm still having to deal with Jehovah every day, which is the one entity I was trying to escape. So he evolved from Satanism into a pagan, and he saw that the pagan movement was, you might say, just as hypocritical as the fundamentalist evangelical culture he had left. So he wrote this book, and he offered alternatives for those looking. And a good guy. I mean, it was really out of compassion. He was tired of seeing modern Wiccan women, holding down two jobs, not able to work, and how drugs were devastating the pagan community and all that. So his idea is these spells do work. He had tried these spells, and these spells could actually make a better life. Interesting thing about Keith is that he considered himself an atheist. He didn't think that the gods were entities or intelligences or even consciousness. He thought the gods were basically cosmic energies, and with magic and with our belief, we could personalize them. But at the end of the day, they weren't personalities, that humans were really the only intelligent life form in the entire universe. So he had a very interesting take on his paganism, but he said his spells worked, and they worked for him. And he believed at the time that there could be a better material reality for anybody who casts these spells, and it could improve the pagan community or anybody looking for his magic. And he said his magic did work. So when I first met him, I thought, well, great idea. We became friends. I interviewed him on the show. And then when my mom's death, and I made that, you might say, tactical mistake, I asked him, I said, well, I want to do ceremonial magic for myself, for whatever solutions I was looking for. So I actually did the spells in his book. And I followed them to the T, more or less to the T. And they did work. That's what I'm saying. I did them for months, and I didn't do the sex magic ones with the spells, because he said they really gave an extra power to them. But I did the spells basically by myself, and lo and behold, I swear that things in a material way got better real fast. I remember money just poured into the bank accounts. There was travel, there were opportunities. I remember, even though before I had been published in a major house with my novel, The Queen of Darkness, I had still struggled for years to publish short stories or books. And I remember just emailing this top agent in New York, and the next morning he called me personally. Eventually the book deal didn't go, but it was just these sort of really quick turnaround, good luck, material rewards by doing the magic in Keith's book. And so what happened? Why didn't I stick with it? Well, what happened is that I, again, overlooked another very interesting law of the universe. And I should have known better, because I knew even then who rules the universe, the God of this world. And basically, there's always a pound of flesh, and everything has to balance itself out. Needless to say, the material rewards that I accrued through magic, I believe, came back and with a price. And all the pain that I had suffered with the death of my mother and other things came back even worse. There was even much more deaths. There were more health problems, mental problems, financial problems. I mean, just like that. It was just, I could even draw the arc of this up and down and bang. And needless to say, I knew that I had played with the forces of the universe, and they had decided that they wanted their pound of flesh, their karma. And I guess that comes down to the idea of sacrifice, because I think in Keith's book, he talked about sacrifices that you could do in a modern way. Keith didn't believe in animal sacrifice, although I think he agreed with me that the universe, well, there's what's valuable in the universe: blood and what it represents, and souls. And I don't think that's ever going to change. That's why you really do have to sacrifice something living if you don't want it to come back to you. And Keith had an alternative where you could sort of show the gods that you were on the up and up, and every spell, the sacrifice would be you do charity work at a local soup kitchen, or you give half of your money to hungry kids and so forth. And that would appease the gods. But I don't think it worked, because even Keith would tell me that there was huge blowback whenever he would work with gods like Ares. And I mean, when talking about huge blowback, he would see the signs and huge destructive forces in his life and around him. And in the end, I mean, Keith's life, he really went to some dark places. I mean, horrible places. And I lost contact with him. And I do hope that one day, I hope he's still around, and I hope he can come out of that darkness. But I would say there's a probability of using all that magic that broke open so many opportunities in his life and had to come back. Again, the gods want their pound of flesh, and they want it sometimes with interest. I don't see really any way around it. Excuse me. Let me get this juice here. So that was basically my adventure or misadventure in ceremonial magic. So I haven't practiced it in many years. These days I focus more on meditation, contemplation, strong praying, dream interpretation, and a few other things. I do like to do some folk magic. I can't share my screen. I was going to show you, but I do, behind this computer, I do have an altar that has Ganesha, an African god, Buddha, a bust of Philip K. Dick, the Virgin Mary, a cross, and a whole other entourage. And I do practice, you might say, folk magic. I do give them food, like some people might give an altar of Santa Muerte or Saint Anthony food. And I think, and it's a great place to live mythologically in my mind, to live creatively. And sometimes there are interesting effects if I do it. But again, it's very petite, and it hasn't had that huge blowback with these giant, again, Baroque spells that I used to do for Ares or Hermes or any of the other gods, those hour or two spells. But again, I don't believe that I am some sort of gatekeeper. I don't believe that I'm even right or even sane in this. So this book, and I have given it away. Keith, it went out of print. Keith has gone underground for many years. I do have a PDF. People who have watched this interview have asked for the book, and I have simply sent it to them because it's really out of print. I think you can get it at Amazon for like $60 or something like that. If you're interested and I don't get like a barrage of emails, I'd be glad. Just contact me through Facebook or thegodabovegod.com, and I'd be glad to send you a book. I think the book is still very powerful as a clarion call for being individual, and a clarion call about how every group in religion eventually becomes corrupt, and we can ask for better, and we can look inwardly. But at the same time, it also has all these different spells for different reasons, to different gods, all Greek gods. Keith only liked working with the Greek gods to summon those cosmic forces. So if you like that book, let me know. But this is where I am today. I don't plan on going back to any ceremonial magic. I remember it was even Bishop Stephen Heller who said that he had practiced ceremonial magic for years, and at the end of the day, he's like, well, I'm still stuck down here on Earth. I mean, what's the point? I want an experience with the transcendent. And I would agree that to me these days, even beyond the folk magic, which keeps me in a fun mythology, keeps me grounded. I also believe I want contact with something higher, transformative, that makes me a better person, and grants me some coping skills as I'm down here in the Canoma with the god of this world, always seeking those sacrifices and deals, devilish deals. And if you want, what about the Gnostics? Well, they certainly practice magic, and I don't want to get into a discussion about what magic is. Obviously, I did write an article. Where's that article? I lost it, but it's called The Radical Way Gnostics Practice Magic. It does talk about, based on some people like Robert Connor and Stephen Flowers, what exactly magic is. How is it different than you might say religion and so forth. I would check that out, and I will put it in the show notes as well if you want to take a look at it. But the Gnostics certainly practice magic. What's interesting is that they practice magic in a very, I'd say in the 1st and 2nd century, in a very different way. And again, another excellent book, which I recommend, which also even has a lot of ideas on magic and spells, and even reconstructs a lot of the rituals, is of course my highly recommended April DeConnick's The Gnostic New Age. Here, can you see it? And as April writes, and I write too with other research in The Radical Way Gnostics Practice Magic, you have the Gnostics basically doing, you might say, therapeutic spells. Yes, they were taking these sort of astral flights to the edge of all reality to get a glimpse of the transcendent realm and the aeons and the invisible spirit and all that. But one of their main thrusts was therapeutic. If you read their spells, they're always talking about healing from trauma and having their emotions balanced. And the trauma was also both personal and cosmic from other lifetimes. That was really a main thrust of their magic. That's probably why Carl Jung really became interested in the Gnostics and called them history's first depth psychologists, because the Gnostics in the 1st and 2nd century were obsessed with the mind, not the brain, but the mind. Even when you look at their cosmology and how they structured the universe, it's almost like a giant mind itself, the levels of the mind and the aspects of the mind. That was really their obsession. And so was therapy, individuation and all that. And like people of those times, they certainly had healing spells, and they had their own folk magic. We found obviously the Abraxas gems and all that. So they weren't that different, you might say, in the Greco-Roman world. later on in the 3rd and 4th century, as the Sethians specifically really started abandoning Christianity, their magic became very radical, and certainly you might say, for all practical purposes, it became illegal, because what they were doing was they started taking these astral flights and actually started commanding the rulers of the heavens, the archons and the angels, and their magic. They started thinking that they were transforming themselves into angels or these other gods, and they were bringing this energy down into themselves and becoming super angels on earth. And that, of course, was completely against paganism, Christianity, Judaism. The universe was the universe, and yes, you might be able to travel the spheres, but you weren't supposed to mess with the heavenly order. You weren't supposed to be stealing power from the gods for yourself. We don't have any reports that they used this power for any material reasons, unlike me years ago, but they seem to enjoy this power, perhaps to I don't know. We don't know, to really gain the powerful gnosis, to gain the command over the universe with the right words and the right incantations, or just the right voice. So I highly recommend this article, as I highly recommend April's book, The Gnostic New Age. Another book which I'll highly recommend, many of you I know have read this, is June Singer's A Gnostic Book of Hours. And June Singer's, of course, a wonderful Jungian. She was a wonderful Jungian scholar, and this book has some really beautiful prayers and rituals, maybe leaning more towards the churchy, but I mean, she has a way of making even some of the darker passages on the origins of the world, or the hypostasis of the archons, to make it really inspirational and beautiful. And it's full of ideas on meditation and contemplation and so forth. So I would recommend that. And other than that, this is my e-cigarette, which I'm allowed to smoke inside the house. But for that cigarettes with my coffee, you got to go outside. But I can do the Juul thing. I wonder if this is like more dangerous than actually saying bad words or talking about something else on the internet. Because, oh my God, you're smoking and so forth. So that's really all I've got here on my little notes. I think I've hoped you've enjoyed it. And again, please let me know if you have any topics or ideas you would like to discuss. So I think right now, for non-members, we shall end it. Again, check out Eric Wargo's show on precognition and time loops. That should be out. Really one of the coming new voices in the esoterica, especially with this book, although his blog has been around the nightshirt for a long time, and just a brilliant guy. Met him at the Gnostic America conference, and his ideas are innovative, groundbreaking, and a lot of paradigm changes. So when it comes to, again, Jung and synchronicity, Philip K. Dick, and so much more. So don't miss that. And for non-members, well, for everybody in this universe, keep writing your gospel and living your own myth, and watch out for the God of this world and his bargains.